the World War II, or was a World War II Army medic, and former prisoner of war. God has really blessed me in my lifetime. I'll be 96 in February the 9th, and still have good health, thanks to VA. I'm one that really is proud of what VA does for the veterans, and I know there's some that are not too happy, but they've really been good to me. And I have a doctor at the present time that's trying to keep me alive till I'm 100, because she said she's going to throw me a big party, and I told her I'm going to hold her to it. So we shall see. We know that we're gathered this weekend to think about veterans, past, present, and those in the future. But the unfortunate part of it, to me, being a veteran, is that twice a year we really have a lot to say and to do about the veterans. But then a lot of people, other than the mothers and fathers that have people in service, they just consider this to be a long weekend and a good holiday to do what they please. So for everyone that really appreciates what the veterans do, the mothers and fathers that have lost some, we're grateful for that. I graduated in 1942, and in our senior year, we had a big class. It was 30 boys, and each one of us had a nickname. And my best friend's nickname was Pepsi, and he and I swam together, played ball together, run around together. And we all were sure that when Pepsi went to bed, he took a bottle of Pepsi with him. Because back then, Pepsi was in bottles, like old bottles. But anyway, we went into service together, and we went through basic and maneuvers, practically the whole year of 43. We went overseas together in a Liberty ship. The whole of the Liberty ship, you can see a picture here. 500 of us in the whole of a Liberty ship, stacked 5 high to sleep, with very little room in between with all the equipment. And he and I went overseas to North Africa. And then when we left North Africa to go as replacements, my buddy and I were separated. He was on a transport ship other than the one I was on, and on the way there, that entire ship was blown out of the water. So what I'm saying is that we talk about sacrifice, and a lot of mothers, fathers have seen sacrifice, and I believe that I personally have lived through sacrifice through him. In the early 80s, my youngest son and I and our wives were fortunate enough to get a free trip to London, Paris, the caves of southern France, and all this was for free. When we were over there the first week, my son and I stood on Normandy Beach and looked out over the water and thought and talked about the waves of GIs that never made it ashore. Over 4,000 were old. And the relics, some of the relics from World War II, still buried in the sand and partially buried in the sand. And my son turned to me He was 22 at the time. And with tears in his eyes said, "Dad, I never knew." And that is so much like it is today with our teenagers. They don't know what it was all about. And that's what happened when he did. Later that day we went to Normandy, one of the largest cemeteries in the world. And the U.S. has many cemeteries around the world. And we stood in silence at that cemetery and stood in awe, looking at the rows and rows of thousands and thousands of soldiers that had sacrificed their life for us, for our freedom. The rows in that cemetery were so straight, as you gazed at them, as straight probably as a light of an hour shot from above. What a sight. And what it does to you when you stand there and think of all the thousands that sacrificed their life for our freedom. Going back a little bit to late 43 and 42 and 43, into 44, we had fought the battles in Africa, the tank battles that were fierce. The Allies had won, and we had moved on up into Italy, and the fighting was severe in Salerno and up through the forest of Italy, and the Allies were making no headway at all, couldn't go anywhere. So President Roosevelt and Churchill at that point in time said the only way to beat the enemy is to get behind the lines. So during the month of January, they assembled over 252 ships, destroyers, cruisers, troop transports, and on January the 22nd, we invaded the beach of a little town called Anzio. Now, Anzio, if you can picture it, was 40 miles from Rome, and in the summertime, beautiful beaches, and it was a playground of the rich, 40 miles away. Of course, back then, I'm sure all of them had good limousines, so 40 miles wasn't anything. But anyway, they invaded on January 24th, and history will tell us, because of lack of opposition, history will tell us that on the very first day, they landed 3,200 vehicles. First time ever that the vehicles were already loaded when they left Naples. The quartermaster wanted to do this, he was told he couldn't, but he went ahead and did it anyway. So it was the first time ever that the trucks were loaded ahead of time. But we landed, and on that very first day, 3,200 vehicles, 30,000 troops, and within 24 hours, there were 50,000 troops. Now picture, if you would, Anzio, a 15-mile-long stretch of beach, maybe from, Ocean City to Rehoboth, 10 miles deep, across land, surrounded by alpine hills, that maybe from Ocean City to Salisbury. On that stretch of land, 50,000 troops. Now, General Lewis was in charge of that once they landed. But prior to landing, the British were in charge. And General Lewis didn't like that. They were telling him what to do, and he didn't like it. So anyway, the purpose for landing was to land, march inland, liberate Rome, and cut off that major supply line to southern Italy. But General Lewis had other ideas. He decided to have the troops dig in and fortify the beach. And then during that 2 or 3 days, the Germans were able to bring up reinforcements, and they surrounded the beach And that beach landing lasted for, not like normally for a week or so, but for 4 solid months. The first month, February, Hitler gave the general the order that at any cost, drive the Allies back into the sea. The 45th Infantry Thunderbird Division, of which I was a part, was in the center of that. And during the month of February, they lost so many casualties that on the 26th of February, I, along with a lot of others, landed on that beach as replacements. History would tell you that because of all the fighting and the fact that the hospital was on the beach, that more doctors, nurses, medics, and support personnel were lost there than in the entire war in 4 months. I was a medic. I spent my first 32 days after landing in and out of the trenches with other medics, taking care of the wounded, bandaging those who could walk and send them back, bandaging those who couldn't walk were put on a stretcher and we carried them back a safe distance till they put on a Jeep or an ambulance. And also there were those who sacrificed their life on the front line, and perhaps I was the last one that gave that person a shot of morphine, and maybe I was the last one that he remembers seeing. Those times in war, you never forget. They're etched in your mind, and you never forget. There were times when, out of the blue, it surfaces, and then as a lot of the psychiatrists will tell you, that's when they say, well, you have a problem like that, all you have to do is think about all the beautiful things that you may have done, you know, swam on the beach in Atlantic City or whatever, and it'll go away. And usually it does. But we were 4 months at Anzio, broke through the line on the 22nd of May, which was almost 4 months to the day, that we sat there and was welcoming in the artillery shells and Anzio Annie that flew over top the big railroad gun. And 4 months to the day we broke loose and fought our way to Rome and liberated Rome and cut off that major supply line. I had a lot of trouble with my feet, and maybe that 40-mile walk from Anzio Beach to Rome was part of it. But that's my biggest problem today, is having trouble with my feet. We spent a month, well, a little better than a month, after the liberation of Rome in Italy, around Naples, R&R for 10 days, at which time I was able to walk across St. Peter's Square, go into St. Sistine Chapel, and look up at the beautiful painting, and not till years later realized that that painting was done with the artist lying on his back. But what a beautiful painting. In August, we were put on transport vessel and made our way to southern France. The invasion of southern France, which came under the Operation Anvil. And the purpose for that was to take a little bit of the pressure off of the fighting in Normandy. It was on September the 12th, after we had landed and fought inland. It was on September the 12th that I and 29 others was captured, and that was the day we lost our freedom. People take freedom for granted. Freedom's not free. It's paid for with a cost. And you find out that when you have a SS trooper who's like 19 years old, excuse me, 19 years old, who grew up and spent most of his life in Detroit or Chicago, and he was called home to the motherland to fight. And the SS troops were young and they were nasty. There were 30 of us captured around 9 o'clock on the 12th of September of 44. And we were marched down the hill from like a plateau. And probably within 10, 15 minutes, we heard a shot. And somebody from behind us had shot our commanding officer. We carried him for 2 days. I was a medic, but the very moment I was captured, all my medicine supplies were taken away. But on the second day, we came to a German aid station, and that's where we left our officer. And did he survive? Only God knows. We marched for 2 or 3 days, and then on the third day, we boarded what they call boxcars, and they call them 40 and 8. 40 men or 8 horses. Many a day, there were at least 50 of us crowded in that small boxcar with the doors locked, and maybe opening on the opposite ends of the boxcar about like that you could just see a little bit of air come in. And we traveled on those to our first prison camp in Lindbergh, and that is where they took all your information, and the Red Cross was there, and they notified your parents that you were a prisoner of war and you were not missing in action. Lindbergh was one of those beautiful little towns, had a large railroad yard, and when we got off of our 48, they marched us through town to about a mile outside of the town where they had huge tents, and that's where they interrogated us and gave us our number, which my number is 88085. So we older people already know that the one number you never forget is the Social Security number. And I never forget my Army number, or I never forget my POW number. And it just stays there. But anyway, the second night we were there, this little town was putting me in mind of, maybe Dover, some of the streets in Dover, Hershey Park, the town of Hershey. Beautiful homes, well-kept yards, and they marched us through there. And the people that were there, the older generation, didn't pay any attention to us, and we went to that tent. During the second night we were there, they had their first taste of war, because the U.S. had finally decided that they were going to bomb that railroad yard. And that they did. And shrapnel with the moms ripped through the tent, and I don't think I've ever been any closer to the ground than it was that night, unless it was the morning I was captured, when I had to crawl on my belly from one foxhole to another to take care of the wounded. That following morning, they took us into town to help clean up. And where the day before nobody noticed us, as we walked through town that morning, we were spit upon, had stones thrown at us, and as I look back, why not? We had shattered their dream, part of the war. I wound up in Stalag 7A, which is outside after many days of being on 48's Stalag 7A, which is about 25 miles from Munich, and large POW concentration camp. And every day there would be boxcars loads that would go into Munich to help clean up the bombings the night before. And I was told after the war that, from one of my friends that was a bomb pilot, that when they went out on a bombing raid, if they really couldn't get to their target or the weather was bad, they always dumped their load on Munich. So Munich was probably one of the most bombed cities in Germany during the war. I, as a medic, because the Germans believed in the Geneva Convention, a medic was not allowed to work. But the medics still had to go. One of us, or several of us, had to go into Munich every day when the other people went in to clean up. And so we just stood around. But we had a purpose, because the Germans allowed the Red Cross to let us have Red Cross boxes. And those boxes either came from England, Canada, United States, New Zealand, Australia. And they might have chocolate bars, cigarettes, soap, socks, a handkerchief, whatever. So what we did was that when we went into town, the medic had his little supply of cigarettes and chocolate from other prisoners, and he was the one that during the day ordered for good bread, not the bread that we eat in the prison camp, which was 50% sawdust, but good hard bread, the long loaves that the citizen ate. So it might cost me a cigarette or whatever to bribe the guard, and he just, he didn't see anything. So then when you headed home, or back to the concentration camp, we had the big old army coats, and the big army coats went almost to your ankles, and they had a really good lining inside. So you'd split the top of the lining, and that's where your bread would go. And then when you got back to the barracks, why you divvy it up with the people that donated cigarettes or the chocolate. But that was prison camp, and like I say, our bread came in on flatbed trucks like you'd haul in a load of bricks, and it was hard as a brick. And our main food was rutabaga soup, which was rutabaga and potatoes, broth, and an occasional rat that may have fallen in the soup. But then, believe it or not, there was some that had stomachs hard enough that you threw the rat aside, and sometimes some of us had more to eat that night. But again, potatoes were the mainstay, and that's all really the Germans had left was potatoes. Very little horse meat towards the end of the war. But people asked me about being a POW in Germany, and after reading and listening to the prisoners in Pacific that were around any Japanese, you could say it was almost like we lived in a hotel, which we didn't, but it was a much better. We were treated well as long as you did what you were told. Nine months as a prisoner of war. Again, a lot of memories, not too many good ones. After I was discharged, we were liberated in April, and of course the first thing they did was take us and delouse us and gave us new uniforms, and the sun will pass around there. While I was there, my shoes wore out, and the Germans furnished me with shoes, and the shoes consisted of a block of wood cut out like the sole of a shoe. Around the top was a rough canvas that was put on my tacks with enough strapping to tie over your foot, and then some rags if you could find them for your feet. And so that's what I had when I was liberated, those type of shoes. My son was fortunate enough to find ones that were actually cut out by prisoners. And I spent the first, probably the first 3 weeks when I was liberated, I'd come home on a liberty ship because of my feet, because I couldn't wear shoes. So that was probably the worst that came out of me, for me being a prisoner of war, was having a problem with my feet the rest of my life. But I have a pet peeve, and I never did anything I can do about it, but I approached this with the Secretary Owens, who's Secretary in Maryland for the Veterans Administration. In Normandy, they approached the beach and lost a lot of men, which took perhaps a week to 2 weeks. In Angio, we spent 4 months, and we liberated Rome. And history would tell you that the liberation of Rome was a turning point in the war in Italy. But in 2014 was the 70th anniversary of Normandy, the invasion of Normandy. And as you all know, the papers and TV was ablaze with all that happened on Normandy on January the 6th, 70 years ago. On the 2014 January the 4th, there were 20 Angio survivors, 19 men and 1 woman, ages 89 to 95, and we met in Nashville, Tennessee, and on the evening of June the 4th, the 20 of us celebrated the liberation of Rome. And 2 years later, we no longer have the Angio survivors because there wasn't enough of us left to have a meeting. But in 2019, this past summer, we had the same thing. We celebrated the invasion of 75th invasion of Normandy. We had a lot of dignitaries that went over to Normandy, and to celebrate that anniversary. But on June the 4th in 2019, because we no longer have a reunion, there was a few of us that celebrated the liberation of Rome. We all know, just reading and looking around, that not too many of us World War II veterans are left. And according to VA, the last World War II veteran to be alive, they think, will be in 2035. And at that point in time, I'll be 112, and I'll probably be the last man standing. But I don't have any control over that. Like I say, my doctor's trying to keep me alive to 100, because I want to collect on that one. So, but that's the story. One of the ironic things of the whole being a POW was that when I was liberated, or not when I was liberated, when after I came home from being liberated, I was home for 60 days, and then Uncle Sam sent us down to best hotels in Miami and put us up in, for 2 weeks. We got up in the morning and didn't have to make our beds, and we go down to the kitchen and order what we wanted to eat. And then I was sent over to Camp Lachey, Louisiana, and I had a supervisory job over there. They gave me the task of taking a group of German prisoners of war out to work every day, and I was in charge. So isn't that ironic? But you know, you look at it and people say, "Well, weren't you hostile to them, or what do you think of that?" Well, they were able to take advantage of everything the people in the United States had. We had to live with what the Germans had left. So why should you look down on? A lot of people don't realize the thousands of POWs that were in the United States, filling up jobs in factories and farms during the war. They're more than you can imagine. In fact, where we lived just outside of Baltimore, Fort Meade, they had barracks full of German prisoners of war that went out into the Carroll County to help with the crops and to pick apples. Again, part of the war. But sometimes I wonder, you know, can they, what's this with transporting all those Germans over to the United States and feeding them? But again, they helped during the war to fill in for the help that was needed to do the things that had to be done. So I thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and I got through it.